Hey guys, we've been trying to avoid talking about the coronavirus as much as possible because there's enough people talking about it already, and unless we have some information to add or to offer that might be of some use to somebody, we don't see much point in talking about it. However, we have been getting lots of questions from people that have been curious as to what's going on in Japan. So a couple of updates for you. Yesterday, Prime Minister Abe declared a state of emergency in some prefectures of Japan, so Tokyo, Kanagawa, Chiba, Saitama, Osaka, Hyogo, and Fukuoka. But he clarified it by saying that he's not going to be ordering shutdowns like what we've seen in some other countries. What he's doing is his state of emergency is allowing him to ask the different governing bodies in the different prefectures to implement some requests to organisations and businesses to close down. So that's been their style right from the start, and it is pretty good. However, Japanese way of doing things is a request from a prime minister is enough to make things happen usually. But it does create a different atmosphere. Instead of demanding that things happen or directing that things happen, requesting that they happen just sort of creates a little bit of a different atmosphere. So we've seen that already with the schools. He requested that the schools close until the 7th of April, which they did, and then he further requested that they close until the 20th of April. So what actually happened yesterday and today was that some of the kids did actually go to school to hand in their homework and to get new homework and to have their start of the year ceremonies and things like that. But it was all very down low key, and they also gave parents the option if they didn't want their kids to go to school, the kids stayed home. So what we actually saw at our local schools is very few kids went. Probably less than half of the kids actually did go to school. So it has been a request thing like that. And then similarly with places like Tokyo, where they requested that businesses close, businesses that were non-essential, that had lots of people gathering, like restaurants and bars and things, they requested they close. Some of them did, some of them didn't. We know from our English-friendly directory businesses that some of the businesses that we promote through the English-friendly directory did close, and some didn't. And some closed after his directive yesterday. That sort of changed things a little bit. Having said that, the requesting that businesses and organisations do things instead of demanding creates a certain atmosphere. But it was interesting the reaction we got to it's the Japanese version. In Japanese, it's the equivalent meaning of state of emergency, and it has a similar sort of a sound in Japanese, so it did freak a lot of people out. And we saw that even in this area where we have, at the moment, we have no cases of the coronavirus in this area at all. But just the Prime Minister talking about a state of emergency did freak some people out. And, we heard a bit of freaking out from some people that we know here. Just because that atmosphere that creates, using those sort of words. And again, obviously there's a need to be careful. Social distancing, masks, personal hygiene, washing your hands, that sort of thing. As far as that's concerned, obviously that's really important, and that needs to be, got across to the people that, we need to be keeping away from other people, and we need to be washing our hands, we need to be wearing masks. But as some of you know, we've been discouraging the unnecessary panicking of people and the unnecessarily dramatic sort of behaviour. Although saying that seems to upset some other people who seem to think that the panicking and the drama is more important, or is it important to get across the idea of how dramatic and important it all is or something. But we think it's possible to take appropriate actions without the drama and without the panic. So having said that, it does seem that the way the Japanese government's been handling it has been pretty good. We've gone right down the list of the countries that are having the huge growth of the huge expansion of the virus. We've sort of come down the list a little bit, so they seem to be getting on top of it a bit. In Tokyo, the numbers of new cases was getting bigger every day, 140, 150, and then the last couple of days it's actually dropped down a bit. So the things that they're doing are working. And as for shutting down the schools, it's probably not a bad idea. So the state of emergency goes to May 6th. It's not a lockdown. Public transport's still running. Supermarkets are still open. People can still go shopping. There's nothing to stop you going out of your house. You can still go out of your house and go places like this if you want to. And again, I mean, this is something, you know, we've been making a point of going out of our house every day and getting out in the sun and getting out and doing things, you know. Because obviously it's just as safe up here doing this at the top of this castle as it would be sitting at home, because no one up here, you know. So yeah, asking businesses closed. Yeah, schools are closed, so another 2 weeks so until April 20, and then they're going to reassess it again. So, oh yeah, the going to school for one day was a bit funny. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. So the things that they're doing do seem to be working. The general atmosphere here is pretty relaxed. You know, we're noticing from social media and the internet what we're seeing going on in other countries does seem to be a little bit more stressed out. They generally seem to be more relaxed about it here, more sort of practical about it. You know, just sort of people are going about their lives pretty much, and following the directives and not the directives, but following the advice about keeping away from other people. But the masks and washing hands is something that Japanese people do all the time anyway, and this time of year in particular. So there's not a big difference to lifestyle here, really, to the way people normally live. And usually people here don't shake hands or touch each other or any of that either. So, you know, and social distancing is something that people usually do, unless there's a big event. Now, all the events, the things that they've asked to close is bars, restaurants, and then city events. You know, festivals, and we've got the cherry blossoms at the moment, and usually people go sit under the trees and have picnics under the cherry blossoms, and they've asked people not to do that. Actually, interestingly, this park that this castle sits on is just a little one out in the countryside, as you can see. And there's no one else here, but there's actually a sign at the entrance that said, please don't bring a blanket and have a picnic under the cherry blossom trees. So, just because they want to avoid that group thing where you get lots of people together under the cherry blossom trees, you know, so that's something they're discouraging this year. So, but yeah, other than that, life's sort of going on pretty much as normal. We're feeling for those businesses on the English Family Directory that have had to close. You know, that'll be the end of some of them, no doubt. You know, closing for 2 or 3 months with no income, it'll be the end. As far as we're concerned, our income's dropped by getting closer to 50% now, because our normal work has dropped to about almost half of what it normally is. So we're in actually a bit of trouble at the moment. We're going to be struggling to pay our bills. If this doesn't change soon, we're going to be struggling to pay our bills at the end of the month. So it is pretty tough. With that in mind too, a couple of our patrons have really stepped up recently, supporting us on Patreon to keep the channel going. So we're putting more time into our Japan channel stuff with videos and photos and things like that, to try and put the spare time that we have now into the channel and into the videos and photos to give our patrons more value for money, because they're supporting the channel more. So again, to those guys that have been supporting us on Patreon, thank you so much. We're pretty deeply, like we said on Patreon this week, we're pretty deeply in the shit, but we'd be a lot deeper in it if it wasn't for the patrons. So, but I mean, we know there's a lot of other people out there in a similar sort of situation that are losing their income and that are worrying about paying their bills. But, you know, we just have to sort of stick with it, don't we? Because it will pass and life will be back to normal again. We just have to wait for it to pass, you know, and be as calm and practical and sensible about it as we can in the meantime, you know. Rather obsessing on it, you know. There seems to be a lot of obsessing on it going on. People just can't get it out of their heads, which is sort of understandable, but it's not really useful. You know, once we've taken the appropriate actions to keep ourselves and our families safe, then we should be able to just move on and live our lives as best we can, make the most of it, you know. Seems to be the way to go, doesn't it? Rather than sit in our homes obsessing about what a bad situation we're in. You know, it doesn't seem to be a worthwhile approach, does it? So that's why we've been trying to make our videos as sort of you know, stick to the Japan topic as much as we possibly can, and try and give you guys this week, you know, watching sunsets and watching flowers in the park and that sort of thing, to give people who are stuck in their homes a bit of an escape. That's why this video has been made up here. Those of you who are stuck, we've got a friend in Spain who's been locked in his apartment for a couple of weeks and no sign of getting out anytime soon. He's not allowed to leave. So we know he appreciates stuff like this. See what the outside world's looking like, you know. So anyway, there it was. There's your update from Japan. Nothing terribly radical. They do seem to be getting on top. Some of the numbers are looking better. I mean, obviously it's still spreading, but the actions that they're taking do seem to be fairly measured and fairly worthwhile. So and again, you know, looking at the big picture, 127 million people. If you look at how many people are infected and how many people have actually died, I mean, one person being sick is one too many, and one person dying is one too many. But to keep it in perspective, if we look at how many have actually died compared with 127 million residents, you know, sad as it is, it's you know, we're going to get through it, aren't we? So anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.